Welcome back to the Fenway Rundown. Chris Cotillo here, Sean McAdam alongside on Tuesday, November 12th. As the Red Sox offseason rolls along, nothing in the way of hard news to report today, but a big time, meaty, juicy rumor to get to, and plenty more. When this thing first broke this morning, the first place you could see it, Sean, of course, was the Fenway Rundown Insider Text Program.
Which you can join by texting the word join to 617-751-6257. Then click the link. That will give you a free 14-day trial period to check it out, get all the breaking news first, ask questions of us, get lineups during the season. And after that, it will be a $4.99 per month charge.
That report from Jeff Passan this morning, John Heyman last night, is that the Red Sox are one of 8 teams that is going out to California, Southern California, to meet with Juan Soto and Scott Boras in the coming days. The Mets and the Yankees, obviously. The Blue Jays are in the mix. The Giants and the Dodgers are going to meet with Soto, two mystery teams. One is believed to be the Tampa Bay Rays, believe it or not. And then the Boston Red Sox are all the teams that are going to be meeting with Juan Soto. So, Sean, your reaction to the fact that Craig Breslow, probably Alex Cora, and whoever else will be traveling across the country for this in similar fashion to how they did for Yamamoto a year ago.
Yeah, with the difference, of course, being that I wouldn't expect that Andrew Bailey and any of the pitching infrastructure people will take part in this. Maybe Pete Fatsi is the hitting coach, is on board. Maybe John Henry is going to be part of this. I would expect that team president Sam Kennedy would also be on board. It's a surprise. Let's face it. I think when we first heard the Red Sox and Soto linked last week, it was looked upon as kind of a plant to perhaps goose the Yankees and maybe the Blue Jays, who were beginning to emerge, both teams in the Red Sox division. Well, this is just the Red Sox or Scott Boras trying to generate interest and bring more teams under the tent. But it now looks legitimate, and I'm surprised. I'm borderline shocked because the Red Sox have to know going into this that this is at minimum, and I underscore that, at minimum, a $500 million investment. It's more likely to be over 600 million. It's possible it could rival the 700 million given to Ohtani last year, with the critical difference being that they are not going to have deferred money, or at least don't expect it to. So we are talking what will easily be the biggest contract that the Red Sox have ever been involved in. Their biggest to date, of course, is Rafael Devers. They were in the $300 million range last year for Yamamoto, but were outbid by the Yankees and Mets and ultimately the Dodgers, the winning team there. I did not see this coming, and why they're doing this is something I've been wrestling with, because it's clear that while they have the resources, if other teams have the resources, so do the Red Sox, particularly big market teams. It just seems that it's pretty obvious looking at this roster that starting pitching is the thing they need to address first and foremost. And probably after that, it's bullpen. As great a hitter Soto is, and let's face it, he's probably the best pure hitter in the game right now. When you think about on base ability, bat to ball skills, power, the ability to hit lefty and righty pitching, the ability to dominate at home or on the road, the ballpark is almost incidental for him. It's not anywhere near their primary need. Does this mean that the Red Sox are willing to spend upwards of $600 million on Soto and still address their pitching needs on top of that? That would be quite a winner, and it would put the Red Sox right back into the contention for a championship and a World Series visit. It's stunning. I can't think of another word to apply to it. And yet I don't think they're doing this. I don't think you do this just as a wink and a nod, just to help out Scott Boras, just to goose the Blue Jays and Yankees in their own division into spending money. I think if you're going cross country with a handful of representatives from the organization and you're meeting with a agent as skilled and as top of the industry as Boras is, you're not doing it just to look good or to appeal to your fan base. You're doing it because you seriously are considering spending this kind of money. And I did not see this coming.
Yeah, I mean, devil's advocate is what does it hurt to do it? Like, what is the harm in going and getting FaceTime with Juan Soto and making a push or putting an offer out there? If you make an offer that causes another team to spend 50 more million dollars at the end of the day, you can look at that as a win in a competitive market. I mean, I just think, you know, I agree they probably wouldn't be going out there if they didn't want the player. Of course, everybody's going to want the player, but there's really no harm to me in going out there and
Yeah,
just
it
seeing,
doesn't
what.
cost anything. I understand that. They're not committing to, well, if you go out there, what if they call your bluff and demand that you write a check right then? That's not how it happens. And it's not how it works. But in a winter in which they have other more primary needs, it seems to be a lot of work if this is all about bluffing and making it look good.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? The meeting, of course, doesn't mean that they are the favorite to get him, that they're anywhere close. I think the whole industry still thinks he's going to go to the Yankees, go back to the Yankees, or go to the Mets. There's a lot of people that think the Dodgers could make a push. Maybe the Blue Jays, they have a ton of money that they never seem to spend. You have to look at the Red Sox as an interesting wild card in all this. And I think if there's anything, it's, the Dominican history in the organization. Rafael Devers now, but David Ortiz, Pedro Martinez before.
Manny
Maybe
Ramirez.
Manny Ramirez, maybe they lean into that over the next few days and then um, see where it takes them. Again, to me, there's no harm in going out, even if you don't have a legitimately amazing chance to go land this guy. And maybe, once you're in the room, there's no downside there. Once you're in the room, you can present something to him that, maybe he looks at and says, wow, this is interesting. I was dead set on going to the Yankees, but, this is interesting.
Yeah, and the Red Sox have a case to make, even though they have not been a very competitive team for the last 4 or 5 years. It's not that long ago that they were a World Series champion. Juan Soto was in the big leagues the last time they won. He has seen them be successful. He has seen them be an elite franchise in the game. As you mentioned, there is a long and recent history of Dominican stars becoming folk heroes here in Boston, from Pedro to Ortiz to Manny to Rafael Devers. Currently, that would appeal to him. The ballpark is a perfect fit for a left-handed hitter of his ability and style. He could pepper that wall and maybe have 50 to 55 doubles a year. He could shoot balls into the monster seats and easily hit 40 plus home runs there. He could play in left field where there's not a lot of ground that you have to cover. I don't see him being the Red Sox right fielder. We know that even though he was nominated for a Gold Glove, most of us kind of scoffed at that. He's not even an average or barely average defender in the outfield, but they could hide him at home in left field. In time, he could be a DH as he gets older. But that's the other thing. You're looking at a minimum, I would say, 10 or 12-year long deal, and in potentially something as long as 13 or 14 years. Well, guess what? If you have Juan Soto on your payroll for the next dozen years, you are basically committed to being a team over the threshold for that entire time. Because if you're going to be paying him 45 or 50 million dollars annually, that takes up a good chunk of your payroll every
And you
year.
have you have Devers on the books for 8 more, 9 more.
Right. So there's two players who could be making 85 to 90 million dollars a year for the next decade. And that is a long-term significant commitment that frankly is not in keeping with the way they've done business for the last 4 or 5 years.
Right. And I looked at this as I was writing about the report this morning. You can move the parameters to fit whatever kind of narrative you want, but this is the truth of it. Since 2018, since they won the World Series, they have given out, and I know Devers' contract, which you mentioned, was huge, the biggest in franchise history. It always kind of gets forgotten because, of when it happened and everything, and losing Mookie and Xander and all that stuff. The Red Sox have given out two contracts on the free agent market since they won the World Series, worth more than $40 million, which is
Forever
a
story,
crazy, crazy, crazy thing to say, but it's the truth. And Yoshida at 90.
right?
Not, two contracts over 100. It's just the one for Story. It's two contracts over 40. Giolito's deal is the third, biggest deal they've given out. I think Jansen, 2 for 32 is the fourth. I mean, it's crazy when you think about that. And, that's now been how many off seasons?
18,
One,
19,
two,
20,
five.
21, 22. Yeah,
Yeah.
six.
So to me, that's pretty crazy. I guess Evaldi got a deal for 60 million right after the 18th season, but since then, just a two over 40.
Right, but again, if you're going outside the organization and bringing
Yeah,
in external players, it is down to Story and Yoshida.
right. Two that have worked out so well for the Sox so far. I want to make two more points on Soto before we get to some other stuff. The first one being, this is my pitch to him, and I don't know if it really works this way. Ultimately, money's going to rule the day. Um, you know that I'm not a massive NBA guy. I'm a huge college hoops guy. But are you going to allow me to make one of the only NBA references as an
If
NBA
you make it,
hater?
if you make it quick, yes.
The Dodgers can let Soto be, Durant on the Warriors, kind of like the Yankees did, where he's, the running mate in an established situation. You come in, you have Otani, Betts, and Freeman, and hey, just join the crowd, and you don't have to be the guy. It's not your team. That's what the Yankees did with him last year with Judge. If you're the Blue Jays, maybe count Guerrero in there, but probably not. If you're the Red Sox, you can pitch, this is your team as soon as you step forward. We know that Rafael Devers does not want to be that guy. We've talked about that. We go back and forth on whether he should be faulted for that. But, really, like they can say, this is your team. I don't know if they would ever offer he be the captain or anything crazy like that. Can't be totally ruled out. But you can say, this is your team, Juan. As soon as you come in, you're not the running mate to Judge. You're not the running mate to Otani and Betts. You're not, this is it. That's how I would pitch it. It's not, Durant joining the Warriors and the Avengers with Curry. It's giving, someone their own team.
Well, and I would think that a second pitch would be, look, for parts of 4 decades, the Red Sox as a franchise had the player who is, uh, you know, almost 60 years after he played his last game, Ted Williams, recognized as the greatest hitter of all time. And they could say, you can be in that category if you come here, that you can be the next Ted Williams, a guy who approached hitting very, very scientifically, who was very big in terms of control of the strike zone and on base ability, the way that Soto has done in his career. Uh, that to me would be a big part of the pitch. We've had the greatest hitter in the game's history here. He is our most iconic player. Uh, there's the Ted Williams tunnel here in Boston. He's a legend, and you can be the next Ted Williams if you sign here.
Uh, People have talked about like positional fit. To me, if you sign him, you just you package Duran Abreu for pitching. You figure it out. You get there, and however you get there, that's not a worry. The other thing people talk about, handedness and needing to add a righty. His splits are equal against righties and lefties. So
Yep.
to me, that's not a
Yeah,
huge
when
concern
you're
either.
talking about a player of this caliber and ability, you're not worried about what batter's box he steps into. He's
Right.
dominant against lefties and righties, home and road. The splits are astonishing. That literally makes no difference where he's hitting or against whom he's hitting.
And then I want to give a little journalism lesson. I did so at BC last night in the class I teach, and we'll do it a little bit more today. Because Sean on Twitter or X or whatever the hell, we've seen a lot of people saying, well, the Red Sox are just leaking this out so they look good. So it looks like they're in, so they're going to pull one over on their fans. Let's take a step back for 1 second. How about when a reporter and a big national reporter gets a list of 6 teams meeting with one player? Could we use any context clues to see where that might possibly be coming from?
That would certainly indicate that the information is coming from the player side and not six different teams.
That's right. So there's a lot of people with these
Do I get an
theories.
A, Professor?
You do. And that is just, I mean, just so stupid that we see this on Twitter now where, Sam Kennedy's calling up Jeff Passan. Hey, we're going to California. That's not what's happening here. So we can throw that out. It's not, as the kids say, that deep. It's really not that, that's not what they're trying to do. Uh, the Red Sox are pretty much on lockdown right now in terms of information. They've been that way for a little while. And you know what? They are meeting with Juan Soto and they are putting their best foot forward in trying to get a deal done. And it's not just some PR thing. Ultimately, they probably won't end up getting him. That's the reality of it because the Yankees and the Mets are in the mix and he just experienced New York for a year. And I would guess the Yankees match any offer that comes in. But this is where we are on November 12th. In the words of
I,
Felger
I,
and
I
Mass,
don't know
we
that the
have a show
Yankees
to do today.
I don't know that the Yankees necessarily match every offer. In fact, when we made our predictions, I thought he was going to go to the Mets, and today, a week or so after that, nothing I've seen has changed my mind. I
Okay, well
think
then do
Steve
they do they
Cohen
do they match any offer that comes in?
to the Mets,
Yeah,
probably pretty close to it. I get
right.
the feeling
Okay.
that this is Steve Cohen's white whale here. He's not going to let Juan Soto get away because of how good he is, how young he is, and because it would mark the first Mets win over the Yankees for an elite player. I mean, they battled over Carlos Beltran before, and Carlos Beltran may well end up in the Hall of Fame, but this is another level. And I think Cohen, having gotten close this year and had a good deep playoff run, and Mets fans are all jazzed up about where that franchise is headed. If they sign Juan Soto and outbid the Yankees, the Mets become kings of New York, and they become, at least on equal footing with the Yankees. Yankees have Aaron Judge. Mets have Juan Soto, who happens to be, 6 or 7 years younger than Aaron Judge. Um, I think the Mets are the team to worry about ultimately in the end. But let's see where this goes. And to the degree that this is legitimate and that the Red Sox are investing their time and energy in that, good for them. This is where they should be all along. Is Juan Soto the best fit positionally or in terms of their most obvious need? No. But as I said, if they are walking into these meetings knowing it's going to cost about $600 million, I'm pretty sure the thinking is that John Henry's not saying, now remember, if we get this guy, that's all we're doing because it's the biggest contract in baseball history or one of the two. They know they need more than this, and that no matter how good Juan Soto is, he's not going to improve the pitching staff, and he's certainly not going to improve it with his defense. You are getting him for his offense and star power, and a guy that you build around for the next 10 or 12 years. But there's more work to be done.
So we'll table the Soto discussion here. Both obviously, Sean will have more probably around when this is uh, published as a pod. You're gonna have an analysis on the site too. No, this is not the insider text tease. We'll get to that in a minute. The other kind of big story of the weekend around baseball, Sean, Roki Sasaki, 23-year-old Japanese phenom, coming over under the original Otani rules where he can sign for a very limited bonus. Um, the math will make your head hurt if you get into it for more than about 15 seconds, but the TLDR there, Google that if you don't know.
I know
Uh,
what it is. Thank you.
okay. Happy birthday again. And is that he's going to sign for less than $10 million as his bonus. He will then be in the pre-arb major league minimum as everyone else, every other rookie for the first 3 years. And then he'll get arb salaries in years 4, 5, and 6. And then he'll be able to hit free agency like Otani did last winter in the same exact system. This is what happens for guys under 25 years old. Yamamoto was 25 when he came over. Therefore, he could pursue the big time deal, which was 325 million, as we talked about. So there are rules. If I'm Roki Sasaki, who just had a couple of injuries in this past year and arm fatigue, I would see if I could probably go 2 more years in Japan, sign a mega deal. But he's rushing to get over here. He wants to be in the majors. It doesn't seem. I mean, we don't cover NPB. We don't know the inner work. We barely know the inner workings of the Red Sox. So we do not know the inner workings of the Chibalate Marines. It does not seem like they have a very good relationship between team and player. And so therefore he's a free agent. The rules of the road here are not the highest bidder, really. The offers are super limited on the signing bonus. It is your college style recruiting, though even that is an outdated reference thanks to the world of NIL. Um, he's going to have a strong
Yeah, well,
cap.
let's put it this way.
Go ahead.
All 30 teams can afford Roki Sasaki.
Right.
This is not Yamamoto where you're going to have to pay $300 million or more to get him. There is not a single team, whether it be the Sacramento A's or the Tampa Bay Rays or the Milwaukee Brewers or Kansas City Royals, Pittsburgh Pirates. Everybody would gladly pay 5, 6, 6.5, $7 million, whatever they have in their current international free agent bonus pool, to get a player of this caliber at age 23.
And you know what? We don't know what his preferences are going to be. Look at the Otani situation. Everybody had guesses. Everybody thought maybe he wants to go to a big market. Maybe he wants to play with a friend. He ended up signing with an organization that is extremely dysfunctional in every way in the Angels. And he was there for 6 years, never made the playoffs, was an incredible player on his own merits and went and signed with the Dodgers. Sasaki is just going to pitch, is going to get pitches from all these teams. He's going to have meetings. The Red Sox are going to be among them. The Dodgers are obviously going to be among them. The Cubs have been a team that we've seen them be successful in the Japanese market with Suzuki and Imanaga the last couple of years. I guess Sasaki's mentor is Yu Darvish, who's in San Diego. Like there are a billion different angles, and it's all guesswork. You can't eliminate any of the 30, like I
Yeah,
said.
especially when you're leveling the playing field from a salary standpoint.
Right.
Whereas I
And
said
so,
the Pittsburgh Pirates may well have more money to spend on him than the Yankees do, depending on their,
yeah, maybe
you
he
know,
just loves, if this guy loves Bridges, the Pirates have an awesome chance to land him.
could
So
be.
here, the Zakum's not that impressive, and they would have less of a chance. But that's the point. I've seen, we reported over the weekend, and this has been out there a little bit. I didn't think it was massive breaking news, but Craig Breslow flew to Japan. And saw him pitch in September. We both wrote that over the weekend, and a lot of the responses, especially to the aggregations on Twitter, were doesn't matter. They're just gonna get outbid because they're cheap. That is generally true with the last few years, but in this case, it's not going to be how it goes. I would say this race is more impossible to handicap than others. Um, and one thing that could work against them is I don't think, and it's like they're from the same country. It doesn't mean that they are friends or know each other. But if you were to ask Yoshida, how has your experience been? Probably not a crazy good
Recommendation.
situation and recommendation. Yeah,
Right.
thanks.
But
But
on the other
Dice
hand,
K and Okajima and some of those guys,
yeah,
Koji had an
and
excellent time.
don't underestimate the role that Daisuke Matsuzaka may play here. Despite the fact that, in general, his stay with the Red Sox was a disappointing one. He did have one very good year. He won north of 15 games a couple of times, pitched in the World Series, and has, by all accounts,
Got a
nothing
hit in
but
the
good
World
things.
Series, didn't he? I
Pardon me?
think he got a hit in the World Series too.
He might have.
Yeah.
Um, but by all accounts, he regarded his time in Boston as a positive one. He still lives in the area, and he has volunteered in the past with Otani, and we don't know about his role in the Yamamoto talks last year. Um, by the way, I was told by an executive with another team that the Red Sox put together a very compelling presentation to Yamamoto last year. Now, ultimately, it didn't win him, and he ended up going to the Dodgers. But the Red Sox put effort into it and did all the right things and said all the right things and appealed to him. They got outbid. They were in the $300 million range. He got 330 from the Dodgers. Mets were willing to match that. Red Sox, who knows if it had come to that, whether they would have upped their offer. But they were serious players for Yamamoto. Maybe Daisuke played a role in that presentation, and maybe Daisuke helps out here. You're talking about one of the pitchers who was one of the first Japanese stars coming over. You had Hideo Nomo and others, but Daisuke was a very big deal when he signed with the Red Sox back in the mid to late 2000s, and that name still carries some weight in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, and when you think Japanese star, at least if you're my age, I'm 29, uh, Ichiro, right? Mariners, the connections, all that stuff. You think that's the premier franchise? That didn't help them when it came to Otani or some of these other guys. So like it's a crapshoot when money is not a factor. We'll see where it goes. But if he has meetings at the Wasserman office, the Red Sox will be going there just like they did with Yamamoto, just like they will with Soto. And the risk, this is, you talk about, I was, I think, more than anybody, I don't know, probably not more than anybody, more than a lot of people last year thought 325 for Yamamoto, who had never pitched in the majors, was super risky. I know he had a good year, won a title, all that. With Sasaki, it's like truly only upside, just like it was with Otani when the Angels signed him. So do everything in your power to sign him. I'm sure they will.
Yeah, I
And
mean, you're gonna spend somewhere between $5 and $7 million on a signing bonus, and then he's gonna cost you less than $3 million for your first 3 years.
Right. And the reports I saw would the last few years he would be the number one pick in the MLB draft. Of course, not just that, but also major league ready at 23 and has pitched it in the NPB and dominated for a few years. So another name to watch. We are at the point where it's names getting thrown around season. Unsurprisingly, as of 8 days after free agency open, there's not been a real big deal. I think Kyle Hendricks is the most well-known player to switch teams, and he's at the end of his career and go to the Angels. Um, but the Red Sox are being linked to everybody, and that's kind of how you'd expect when they have the needs they do. From Burns to Fried to Flaherty to Crochet, as we talked about last week, and Sasaki on the pitching side. From Soto to Teoscar to Tyler O'Neill on the offensive side, we're still at the point where, in the words of Kevin Garnett, anything is possible, and we don't have those answers. But to me, I think that you have to look at this and say, like, ultimately the proof's going to be in the pudding when they make a move, like we talked about with Chris Smith on Friday. But you have to feel like, just the narrative from all sides, from all reporters, from everything is that they are back in the deep end of this market and that it would be a surprise if they didn't make a big splash or two. Ultimately, they have to get it done. Until that happens, it's just all bullshit that we talk about. It's all predictions and prognostications and us sitting here doing the same thing we've done for years. But as a fan, I think you have to feel more confident than you have in the last few years. And I'll also say, like, when you look at the amount of talent that's on the board this year, across the board, from Burns and Fried, Crochet, those types of guys, to Soto, Sasaki, all this stuff, like maybe we can't fault them for not going crazy for Jordan Montgomery. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot better high end players that are out there right now. I know Burns only for 1 year moved. I know Cease moved and Glass now and all those guys, but like to me, there's a lot more certainty on this market. It does. So in that way, it makes sense that now is when they're going to make their move, if they make their move, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and ultimately, it's got to be a all-in kind of approach here. It doesn't mean that they necessarily land everybody they go after, but it has to be a sincere and legitimate and heartfelt effort, whether we're talking about trade or signing a free agent. They need to show that they are real players, that this is not a PR stunt, and that they are intent on getting back to a point where they are thought of when the best talent becomes available. That's not been the case for a while. They were not in on Soto as a trade target when the Nationals moved him to San Diego. They were not in when San Diego traded him to the Yankees. They have been out on some big free agents, and the evidence so far this year suggests that they are starting to go after big game again. How successful that will be, we'll know in a few months, but at the very least, it looks like a good sign.
And I do want to note that because this has not been super widely reported, but we did, I guess it wasn't we because I think you were at a competitor at the time, but the Red Sox did have these preliminary talks and these preliminary meetings with Aaron Judge when he was a free agent a couple of years ago. So I'm not saying that this we can equate the Judge and Soto processes, but like they did try that. And so again, in that case, didn't hurt to dip their toe in, even if it came down to the Yankees, the Giants, and the Padres as a wild card. Same thing here with Soto. Last thing I want to touch on, another part of that big passing report this morning. Our good friend, who still has me blocked on Twitter, Nick Pivetta, who has until Tuesday, a week from today, um, to accept or decline his qualifying offer. Jeff Passan saying he's likely to decline it and get a pretty big deal. He mentioned, I think, the Cubs, the Braves, the Orioles. I think I might be screwing that up because I wrote this at 9 a.m. and then fell back to
Yeah,
sleep.
Cubs and Orioles certainly were two of the teams mentioned.
Um, Cubs, Braves, and Orioles. I got it. And
Yep.
he thinks he's going to get one of the bigger deals um, for a free agent this winter. Okay, if that's how it plays out, kudos to Craig Breslow. We did doubt you, but we didn't deserve you don't deserve that if you read the market well. And the other thing I'd say on this, and I know that you agree wholeheartedly, Sean, is if he's going to get one of the bigger deals from a team this year that thinks they can figure it out, let him go. Say thank you for your service in
Pick up that
Boston
draft pick.
and pick up the draft pick and goodbye. Seriously, they should not even make an offer.
Yeah, I don't anticipate them being in the bidding to retain him on a multi-year deal. I think the strategy all along was exactly what we talked about, that your sense is the market is such that he's going to get enough interest that there's no way he's going to take a $21 million 1 year deal when he might get that for 3 or 4. Passan is hinting that it could be more money than that and perhaps even longer. I find that astonishing because
Right.
you and I have seen him up close and personal for the last 4 or 5 years and his inconsistency and the flaws in his game. But if someone wants to overpay him like that, take the pick and run.
Yeah, the Red Sox aren't at a point where they can be, banking on upside. They need to bank on certainty. If another team wants to do it, then go ahead. But I just think, if they can get a draft pick for him, like that's amazing. And to me, I don't know that we have executives from other teams listening. I think we definitely have the Senate locked down as listeners of this program, but I don't know if we have front offices from other teams. To me, don't give up 65 million and two draft picks for Nick Pivetta if you're another team. It's not worth it. But some teams going to think they can do it, think they can turn him into an ace, and it seems like that's what's going to happen. That's the Fenway Rundown for today. We will have one more episode this week. We are looking and trying to book a guest. We do have a kind of big name guest coming on next week that is booked as part of some charitable endeavors, so we look forward to that. Um, We'd like the runtime of that to be about 34 minutes. That's a hint. It's going to be more about 10 or 15, but that'll be next week. One more coming to you on Friday. Until then, all the latest for you on MassLive.com and the Fenway Rundown Insider Text program.
Which you can join by texting the word join to 617-751-6257. Click the link to subscribe. You'll get a free 14-day trial period. After that, there'll be a $4.99 per month charge.